Yeah, I think the appeal is that New York is so overstimulating that you have to travel and take breaks or you're gonna like lose your mind.
You feel that way?
Yeah, and a lot of people do feel that way. New York, I've never lived anywhere where people are more well-traveled and cultured. Everyone's always in Europe somewhere. They don't just go to the local beach town, and that was a thing that was intimidating to me when I first moved here. You're mentioning countries I've never even heard of or areas I've never even heard of. And I'm like, oh, I go to the Jersey Shore every summer with my family. So anyway, the New Yorkers are like built to travel. They're obsessed with travel.
Wake and Wander, Episode 3. My guest today is Matt Boy Pierce. Get ready for this one. He's a rapper on a New York City bus tour. Not too many of those creeping around. In our conversation today, I explore with Matt, how did he become a rapper for a bus tour? We'll also talk about one of his other passion projects, his YouTube channel, Ambient New York, which is a great example of virtual tourism in action, an industry that's seen tremendous growth over the past decade. Call me crazy, but I think one day we could be paying for trips that we don't even take. We'll discuss that. Throughout our conversation, we'll touch on all things New York City. What's it like to live without a car? Matt's been doing it for over 15 years. Later, we'll talk about the best 3 minutes each day in Times Square and the rising phenomenon of people using YouTube to plan their travels. This podcast will be talking travel, talking to guests from all over the world. Thanks for joining. Talk to me.
Can you
hear me?
turn yours down a little bit? Just your volume level.
Too loud in your ear?
Dude, I'm like very sensitive to ear volume.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you wear headphones all the time?
Yeah, I keep everything like low, but like this is good.
Why do you keep everything low?
Just protect my hearing, man. Protect my hearing. I've been mixing music for so long, and I have friends who've had problems in this industry.
Just from wearing headphones while they're recording? And
yeah, or like just a lot of people mix way too loud. Like there's a misconception that like audio engineers should mix loud. It's actually like kind of the opposite. Just like kind of an average or below average volume to kind of protect your hearing.
What do you mean by that when you're mixing? So when you're working on a file and you're playing it back to yourself just to hear how everything's sounding, the misnomer is that people want to blast it so they can feel it and everything?
Yeah, like music does. There's some scientific evidence that it actually sounds better the louder it gets.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I did hear that. Can't pinpoint where.
Probably from someone who went to a concert.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I wear earplugs. I bring earplugs everywhere I go. Karaoke bars, concerts, even like bars that are extremely loud, like a sports bar during a game. I just pop them in. They're transparent. No one sees them, and I just want to be extra safe. I'm in the long game here.
I wonder because I feel when I play stuff louder, it's not that it sounds better, but my body has a different reaction to it. Like it gets you pumped. You get like
gym.
Exactly. Like you get that endorphin running, and I wonder if there's something to that where people just feel like it's sounding better because they're on this euphoric high, but maybe it's nothing to do with that. Do people have problems with that where they damage their hearing and then they can't accurately judge or mix music?
Yeah. My music teacher has had challenges with this. I forget the name of the condition. If you said it, I would know it. And a lot of people, there are multiple people who are longtime musicians who have this challenge. It's like this painful ringing. It starts as, I think, a low register kind of noise, and it's like a pain in their eardrum. So it's something that freaks me out, and I never want that to happen. So I kind of play it safe. I will listen to certain mixes on a louder volume just to get a range, walk around the room, get different perspectives. But overall, keep it kind of medium or even like low.
Do you have to listen through different formats too? Like if you're listening over a speaker versus headphones? I do that with the podcast too.
Yeah, because you think about all the ways that the consumer digests the song. Some listen on AirPods. Some listen on studio monitor headphones, high-end headphones. Some listen in the car. The car test is a term that we definitely use in the mixing community. Hey, did you do the car test?
Really?
Yeah. Music, I mean, especially, I don't know why, hip-hop is like, sounds better in the car. It's like a cool thing. You're going somewhere. Most of my hip hop listening, just growing up, is in the car.
Turning the bass up, getting it going.
The car test, it just gives you a kind of a surround sound feel. So it's like you got to kind of listen on different, even like you can listen on your computer speakers that aren't great, like just the built-in factory speakers. Listen on that too. You're going to get a different kind of perspective.
I really even never think of that. So you did that with all your other, like your old albums, things that you produced. You would just ride around in the car listening to yourself.
Yeah, and the part with living in New York City is that I don't own a car. So when I'm home in Delaware and I can borrow a parent's car, one of the things I use it for is the car test. Even if I'm not going anywhere, I've sat in the driveway, like don't even turn the car on, and just sat in the driveway. Neighbors must think you're nuts, like just sitting in there and listening to the latest mix that you bounced in a parked car in a driveway.
All right, so we're setting the stage. That's a good lead in. We're in New York City right now. I'm here for the first time. I honestly think it's 10 years. I mean, I don't think it's been that, but definitely pre-pandemic, and then maybe 2018, 2017. It's been a long time since I'm here, so it's good to be back. And one of the first things I realized when I got here was just this idea of the lifestyle people live here, and one of which is that they don't have a car. And so it led me to, I wanted to read this to you. You know, you're one of the 8% in America. 8% of people don't have a car. And there was some interesting data here. 8% of households in the United States don't have a vehicle. 92% have at least one vehicle. 36 have two. And 22, which is a quarter of people, have 3 or more vehicles, which is pretty crazy. And not surprisingly, car ownership by city, cities with the highest percentage of residents without cars include New York City. So 42% of residents in New York City don't have a car. Which I thought was pretty low.
That's low.
I thought it would be higher.
I have trouble naming friends who own a car, especially most people in Manhattan. Maybe when you get further out into like Long Island, it definitely shoots up when you get into more suburbs. And I guarantee you that list correlates with cities who have great public transportation. Because here, I don't even think about a car. I haven't owned a car. I didn't even own one in Philadelphia. I haven't owned a car since 2009.
That's 15 years, if my math is correct, 16 years. What is life like without a car? For someone that lives in Colorado, for example, in western Colorado, the thought of not having a car is terrifying because you can't get anywhere.
See, I don't even think about it. Just here, you don't even think about it. You can get basically anywhere within 30 minutes, whether it's Brooklyn or Harlem. And I love walking. I love biking around the city too. So I don't think about it. And the cost of housing a car here is just tremendous.
How much is a parking spot?
I think it's like up to $800 a month. I'm making this up.
Wow.
This could be more. I'm just taking a wild guess.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was at least $500 a month. I'm sure it's like highly competitive, but most apartments don't come with a parking spot.
No
But
way.
You don't miss it at all? Like you don't feel like you don't have freedom to get where you want to go, or?
Not really, because it's been so long. However, when I get the opportunity to drive a car, whether I'm back home at my folks' place or traveling and rent a car, I just love it. You know, I just think back to high school and riding around with friends in high school after getting your license. There's few things that were as cool as that experience and that freedom. So when I get the opportunity, I love it. Otherwise, it doesn't even cross my mind.
Do you remember how to drive?
It's like riding a bike. It's like driving a car.
What about, like, because here, I guess in New York City is so unique because you can take a train to the airport. You can take a train up north to Boston area. You can take a train down south to Philly, D.C., Delaware when you go home. There's really nowhere. I mean, you can even take a train out to the beach, up to the mountains. So I guess, in theory, your thing is right. I guess, like I said, just as someone from a wider area, it seems so bizarre. You took a sabbatical from your job, which we'll get into, and how you got to where you are and everything. But, yeah, what brought you to New York originally?
So what brought me is that after college, I lived in Philadelphia and kind of got my feet wet with a city experience and really enjoyed it. I worked in advertising in Philly, different ad agencies, and I also started performing. I am a hip-hop artist. I'm a producer, a performer, do a lot of improv hip-hop based on crowd input, freestyling, if you will. And I started doing shows in Philly, and in my mind, both of those things, both advertising and music, clearly a huge opportunity in New York City. New York City, Madison Avenue, the home of advertising, Don Draper, if you will. And what happened is that when I started doing these shows in Philly, I had this opportunity to do a show in New York City, to be part of a showcase. And believe it or not, you wouldn't think this as someone growing up in the Northeast. You assume, you've been in New York City tons of times. I had only been, I think I could count on one hand. The first time I think I went to New York City, I was like a sophomore in college, which seems like unforgivable. You got the most famous city in the world, 2 hours away. You could just jump on a train, you're there. And that wasn't the case. So this opportunity was exciting for so many reasons. One being that, I hadn't experienced it a lot. Like, you're doing like a show in New York City. Like, this is such a exciting thing. And I did it. It was at Webster Hall, a famous nightclub venue in New York City, long-standing venue, and just felt really strong about my performance. And it was even more than that. It was when I got off the stage, I felt very welcomed. I felt very welcomed as I was performing. I felt the crowd gave great feedback, great reactions. You can tell with rap, if you're doing well, if you hear like these roars from the audience. Rap, it's called like a punchline. When you have your setup line and you have your punchline, and I had a lot of punchlines that landed that night that I felt the crowd really enjoyed. And when I got off, everyone was just so friendly, like introducing themselves. One group was like, let's take a photo with you. It was so cool and unlike any show I'd ever performed at. And I remember that night that I told myself, this was 2012, and I said, in 2013, I'm moving to New York City. I didn't really think much of it. I even still have the note in my phone. I wrote it, like timestamp 2012, 2013, New York City.
Love it.
It was just one of those things that you feel. And so going back to my ad agency job, I would hound HR, and because it was a global company called Publicis, one of the largest advertising networks in the world, and they had a Philly office, they had a New York office. So I started chipping away. Feel like I was at her door every week. Hey, any opportunities in the New York office? Hey, any opportunities in the New York office? Like months on end, nothing. And one day she comes to me, hey, Matt, like there's a marketing job opening, New York office. Do you want to interview for it? Absolutely. Got the interview, got the job, found a place as quickly as I could. And that was like my foray into New York City.
Let's go back a little bit, because how did you even become a hip-hop artist? You're talking about the show you did, and you're doing shows in Philly. What do you remember from your childhood? Like, what's your earliest memory of doing something like that? How did you even discover it?
Earliest memory, and I'm lucky in that I got to grow up in what I think is the greatest era of hip-hop, which was 90s hip-hop. So this was a lot of people have a reputation, or this idea of 80s rap is like kind of corny, it's like, I don't feel that way, but like kind of sing-songy, and I went to the store and I did this, like kind of like simple, day-to-day stuff, like kind of some silliness. And however, like 90s took this like almost attitude turn, I think, of the WWE Attitude Era, and like kind of flipped everything on its head. That kind of same thing happened with hip-hop, and we had people like Notorious B.I.G. and Wu-Tang Clan, Jay-Z, Nas, these iconic guys, and it just exploded with MTV. This was still a cassette tape, and things like that.
MTV, when actually music was still on MTV.
Yeah, that's
before
how
it was all reality shows.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember going home every day and watching TRL.
Yeah.
And you would watch the music video, actually. Like, I had friends that were deep into music videos. I don't think I've seen a music video. I'm sure they still exist, but I definitely haven't seen one in 2 decades.
Yeah, that was the after-school thing, and that's how I consumed it. And again, this is not only rap. Just music has been around me my whole life. My dad is super well read in 60s and 70s, kind of classic rock, Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and he still has vinyl records filling our basement, just overflowing cabinets of vinyl records. And rap it just kind of spoke to me. I was a very shy kid. I was an introverted kid, and rap is the complete opposite of that. It's all about being confident. It's all about, showcasing your skills, and it's a competitive kind of thing. And that connected with me. So it started with just being a fan for so many years, and it didn't transition into the art of creating until I got to college, pretty much.
But why did it, if you were an introvert, why did its outspoken nature speak to you? Is that because you were trying to be more that way in your growth?
Yeah, I think it's something that I secretly sought out, that I wanted to be this outspoken way, that there's no rules in it. It's not like a sport where you got to be some kind of size to play football. It's a completely different thing. You can just kind of just be yourself, and that evolved a lot starting when I was almost in college, because there was one persona of hip hop for a very long time, and call it the white rapper didn't exist. Now people don't think twice about it. Then it was tarnished by, I don't want to say tarnished, but there was almost a bad reputation. You think of Marky Mark. You think of, Vanilla Ice. Everyone was like, no, this doesn't happen. So the only kind of rap in the mainstream was gangsta rap, gangsta persona, the outlaw brand, if you will, going against the grain. So that the thought of me rapping wasn't really a reality. I'd never seen it. So, and that kind of shifted. Rap did a big shift around early 2000s. And Eminem was a big influence.
So he wasn't the first white rapper. I always think of Eminem as the first white rapper, but I guess Vanilla Ice was before him.
Yeah, Vanilla Ice, Marky Mark. There were underground guys, but no one in the mainstream kind of broke through like Eminem.
I feel like Eminem had that roughness to him.
Yes.
He wasn't a gangster, but he brought sort of that harder edge.
Absolutely.
I just remember Vanilla Ice from the Ninja Turtle movie.
Yeah, Turtles too, baby.
So what were you, the drunk guy in college performing at parties, or how did you start doing this?
That definitely happened.
Yeah.
That definitely happened. And it's like anything else. The first step of being good at something is sucking at it.
That's a great perspective. I love that.
That is actually from the cartoon Adventure Time.
I don't know.
It has a cult following of really cool, post-apocalyptic. It's Finn the Human and Jake the Dog. I'm sure you've seen imagery of it from the late 2000s. Anyway, that's a very deep quote that's from that show, and I always remember it. And I started the summer after high school graduation, going into college, and just messing around with a couple buddies. Just did it with there was a guy in my college dorm room floor who freestyle rapped, and we would get together and just play beats. This was a time where it was hard to find rap instrumentals, so it was oh man, I got this Big Pimpin' Jay-Z instrumental, whatever it may be, and we would just chill in the dorm room.
What would you guys rhyme about? Do you remember?
It could be inside jokes about the dorm, some guy who got wasted last night. It could be about walking around campus, the local DP Dough Pizza, the local Deer Park Tavern, I went to University of Delaware. It was mostly just about our life.
Observational.
Yeah, and it was goofy. We'd try to when you made someone really laugh, that was such a great feeling. And so we'd freestyle. I would freestyle at parties. I got a reputation for once I started to get better at this, people would be like, "Yo, man, we need a guy hear you tonight."
Oh, they'd request it.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So had you at that point converted yourself from not being an introvert to be able to stand up in front of this party and freestyle rap about people there?
It was a big step, and there was even a talent competition sophomore year in the dining hall, and someone nominated me for it. I didn't sign up. Someone nominated me.
It's like signing your friend up for karaoke.
Yeah. And this was and it was a huge turnout, and I can't tell you how nervous I was for this thing.
Oh, I would have been horrified.
I was 19 years old.
Were you mad at that person that did that to you?
Ultimately, no. At first, and again, this wasn't feet to the fire. I could have backed out. There were friends of mine who were nominated for this thing who said no. For whatever reason, I did it. and I prepared a I prepared a custom rap, basically inside jokes about campus. There was this one guy who worked at the dining hall who would randomly show up at campus parties. Oh, he's in the rap. There was this guy, he was like a religious preacher who would stay outside of a certain Kirkbride Hall on campus. He was in there. Some guy who walked his dogs and whistled at his dogs, the dog whistler. He like any inside joke about campus life, because I was like, that's my in. I got to make these people laugh like really hard. And so I wrote it, I memorized it, I had the beat, and I did really well. Like I got runner up. I did not win, but that was something I never would have done, and it felt like just the feeling afterwards of pure elation.
It sounds like you have a lot of qualities of a good writer because you are very observant to what's happening around you, and then you're formulating those observations into a coherent thought, and in this case it's a rap. Do you get equal enjoyment out of the writing and the performance? I mean, one of the things I've always liked about your work is that your songs are very deep, and you can tell you have very distinct observations in there, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I do love the art of writing. Even before I put words to music, I would write poems in high school. Heartbreak, high school heartbreak.
Got to do it.
A classic emo.
In the margins
probably
of the notebook.
Yeah. So I got really into writing in high school, and I was even in some of our school's poetry books that students could submit pieces for. So I didn't even think about the connection for this conversation. That's something I started with, was just poetry. And what I really focused on in college, but I would perform at these parties, whatever. It was informal. I wasn't performing on a stage or anything in college. I was more so obsessed with the studio, let's call it the beat making, the production aspect. So I learned all about tempos and beat matching and tempo shifting and remix mashups, if you will, in college. Was kind of like, that was my foray into music production, was just being like a kind of like producer / remixer, is how it began. Years before I guess I had the confidence to actually record something and release to the world. That was a very intimidating thing that it took a long time to get over. Was, what is so-and-so going to think about this? I was like my first year in a professional job in Philly, and when I started like to dabble in this, let's actually record me doing this, like release it out there, make some music videos perhaps. And I think that took a long time to get over that hump, because people see you in a certain light, and when you challenge that light, a lot of people push back on it, and they're like, no, this is what you are to me. Whether that be coworkers, family, like, oh, what's my answer? Like, you get stuck in your head, and none of these people think about you.
People have definitions of who you are, and they hold that to you.
Yes, and that was a hurdle that took a while to get over, and it really, the turning off point was doing, like, performing in clubs and shows was like a huge leap.
That's almost easier in some ways. I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. As a writer, there are some pieces I'll work on that are very personal to me, and I'll sit there and I'm like, am I really going to publish this? Right? Because to me it means so much, and I'm into it, and it's even just writing it was the experience for me. And now you want to share it because you hope other people can get something of it. But as we'll talk about later with the new age of media, there is this feedback loop that you get addicted to, and you want other people to connect with it and like it. But then now you've moved on to a different part of the experience. You have the experience of creation, and now you have the experience of sharing it and seeing how the world interacts with it. And it's scary because you don't want your impression of what you've done to be changed by how people view it or how they push back against it or whatever they do with it. So I definitely resonate with that. So let's jump forward. So you have moved to New York City, and one of the most fascinating parts of your journey, which I heard recently on a podcast, the What's Your Podcast, and it's a cool overview of what you've done, is that you were a marketing consul and working at a pretty established company and making a good salary and doing all this stuff, but you basically became the company's rapper. I mean, at the
Yes,
end of the day.
This is true.
So I feel like it's useful to talk about the story, because when people pursue passions, it's sometimes difficult to know where to start. And your story is so fascinating is because it all, now looking back, it's a perfect path, but you were just doing it all simultaneously to now being a full-time creative producer. So tell us a little bit about that, working in this very corporate company, but then becoming this entertainer.
Yeah, this was, again, another thing where you have to lean into discomfort and lean into fear. And whenever you do that in life, I find you just get massive feedback. You get massive gains, whether it be a positive or negative outcome. Either way, you're going to learn so much about yourself by leaning into those things. So I was working at a big agency. It's called Havas, another global huge agency network. And this was literally on Madison Avenue in New York City is where I worked for many years at this company. And some people knew. I had friends in the agency, and some of them knew about this side life, if you will. It was still not widely publicized. Not everyone knew about it. Actually, very few people knew about it. So there was this, ad agency is work hard, play hard culture. You work tons of hours. There's couches in the office for a reason. People sleep on those things when there's product launches, and I've slept on those couches. And anyway, they reward you. And whether that be a booking a band, booking like a legit famous band for your company, or like just fun happy hours. So there was one particular happy hour where I don't even know how this came about. I ended up like volunteering to perform at this company happy hour. And I did, again, going back to the way I approached this college thing in the cafeteria, I made it about them. I name dropped like the CEO of the company, the president of the company, just nuances about clients that like there's so many annoying things about clients and just corporate life in general. And I did that, and it was just like everything, the way people saw me, and I became like the culture guy. I was the guy performing when we had like the whole New York Havas company party for the Christmas party. I was on stage in front of like 1,000 people just ripping it up.
That's crazy.
About the company. And it even got to a point where I was doing shift to the next agency I worked at after that. I was doing custom songs about like the holiday gift exchange. I did an onboarding song. So the vision here is someone's coming new into the ad agency world. What do they need to know? And I partnered with one of the creative directors of the agency who did the visuals for the music video. We did this thing called the process. You got to follow the process. And we walked through what is ad agency life? What does a copywriter do? What does a art director do? What does an account person do? Project manager.
And you made a rap about this?
Yeah.
That you would send to clients?
Well, ultimately, it did get there because this was part of an internal competition. And the assignment was simple. It said, work with someone from a department you normally would never work with. And it was open. Whatever you want to create. So I was an account lead, client relationship management. He was the art director, creative director. And we came together and we created this like amazing piece that was picked up by Adweek. Adweek covered this, which is just the outlet in advertising. And they wrote about it, and what happened for 2 years, the CEO of the company would play it on new hire day. Like they would welcome the new hires, and they would be like, "Oh, one of 2 people who work here did this," and that's still on YouTube. So, Boy Pierce, follow the process.
Yeah, I'll post your stuff on the episode description for
Great.
sure. Yeah, but that's wild. And so, at what point then? Like, take us through your mental journey during this, because when did you first think maybe I could do this full time, like be a creative instead of sleeping on couches and working, all these hours for clients?
Yeah, it was always, it never left my mind. People would ask me that all the time, like, would you want to do this full time? My answer was always the same, if the opportunity's there. It's not like a thing where I can just leave this job and just create beats in my bedroom and I'm not selling anything or monetizing at all. So that needed to be there, and that takes time to kind of establish that. It's tricky to make money in creative. So I didn't just focus on music. I had to learn by default, how do I make a music video? How do I shoot a music video? How do I edit? So I learned not only how to write songs, how to produce. So how to mix songs, meaning, oh, that's a revenue angle. I can produce for people. I'm going to learn how to edit videos for myself. Oh, there's another opportunity. I can be a freelance video editor. It doesn't have to be tied to music. It can be someone selling real estate in New York City. It can be, I don't know, local diners who need content. Everyone needs video content. And so I learned all these little things. It wasn't just music. I need to learn a suite of creative services. And the turning point is when I got a job as a performer, as a performer for a tourism company called the Ride in New York City. And I started working there part-time. Again, I still had the ad agency job. So this was a turning point where it was like, wait, so I'm getting income from this gig. I'm just working weekends and nights. Really getting fulfillment out of it. I'm bringing joy to people. It's very different from the corporate world where it's like you launch a website and it's like you don't really have any pride over it. Like, you're not going to tell your grandkids about the time you launched or all your buddies at happy hour.
Yeah.
And like comparing that fulfillment, and also when you launch those things, it's just on to the next thing. It's just like, okay, cool, that's launched. What's the next? We gotta get this deadline. And when you get to give joy to an audience and you see smiles on people's faces, it's a really special thing. And I had that, and I knew that I could have value for people in other areas like video editing, songwriting. I started dabbling in like a monetized YouTube channel, and I kind of gathered all these like random things over the years, these skill sets that all came together, and it was like a now or never moment where if I don't jump now, I'm never going to do it, and I'm going to regret this. Like hey, this job's giving me money. Is it as much as the ad agency? Absolutely not. But this is a path. This is a start. And so I pulled the plug in September 2023, a little over a year ago, and have been just kind of on this independent journey.
Give you a lot of props for it. I think it's so cool how you developed these skills as you went, and then it all just blossomed into something. But you must have been grinding to do all this because you were producing albums while you were having this full-time job. Yeah. You weren't watching TV when you came home.
No, you're exactly right. I was working on whatever music video was next. I was working on the next album. I was preparing for the next show. I was doing lots of live shows. And so there was always something, whether it be a video, album. So yeah, it would be, go to this was back in the office days, get home and get on this next task. So it was 100% two different. I wouldn't call the other one a job, but it was two different like professions running simultaneously.
How did you develop the discipline to be able to do that? Most people go to work, they're exhausted, they come home, they watch mindless TV or whatever. How did you develop the discipline to cut that out? I'm sure that impacted your relationships, your friendships. You're not going to the bar after work. You're not hanging out with people.
It helps when you genuinely love this thing that you're chasing. I can sit in front of a microphone and the notepad, and I'll look at the time again, what feels like a couple minutes, and like 3 hours have gone by. So just that's a reward in itself, like you said about that journey being a reward in writing. And I also got a lot of discipline in college when I switched majors. I did a very major shift of majors in college. Junior year, I started as an English major, and then sophomore year, I didn't really enjoy it. I liked writing, but I didn't get into the literature part of that major. And I started taking a few science classes sophomore year and really enjoyed them. And so I switched to biology major my junior year, and I was determined to still graduate on time, which is like a crazy uphill battle to switch junior year. And that's when I developed self-discipline. Like those 2 years, I spent so much time in the library. Had to skip like parties and stuff like that because like I wanted to excel. I didn't want to like go more than 4 years. I wanted to just complete it, and I was just absolutely determined. Winter semester, summer semester, did it all, and spent so much time in the library and just developed this like grind, this work ethic. And people like us from the East Coast, we love that stuff.
We love it.
We love just tasks and to-do lists, and okay, it's like an obsession. It's building something, and also even before that, training for like cross country in high school. That was my first foray into like, you put this in and you get this result. I worked like really hard one summer and just like made a huge leap in terms of where I was on the team. And that was another thing that just showed me just real rewards just come with dedication and sacrifice.
You said something to me before we came on. I don't want to misstate it. Maybe you can repeat it. It was something about how humans are happiest when we're building something.
Yes. Building your business, it can be building up your fitness regimen, building up your body to a very healthy state. A challenging project at work, whereas just sitting around and being idle, you create challenges for yourself, and the human mind is just designed to find threats, and it will find threats where there normally would not be threats because you're giving yourself all this time, whether that be just scrolling your phone or just on the couch, TV, whatever it may be, as opposed to just you have this building mission.
You're doing it. You're not watching other people doing it. You're doing it.
Right. This guy, MC Lars, who's been a great mentor to me, very like popular rapper. He's been doing it for a long time. He says he likes to spend his time creating versus consuming content. Prioritize creating over consuming.
I love what you said, too, about college, because I feel the same way. I'm not sure I learned much in college in terms of I could recall, like, freshman year biology or junior year algebra or whatever. I mean, probably took algebra in high school. Who knows, right? It's like I don't remember the subjects, but that grind you're talking about, that ability to say, plan your loads, as my dad used to say. I can't go to this party tonight because I got to do this, and that's going to benefit me down the road here, next week, a month from now. Or looking at your schedule and be like, how the F am I going to get all this done in these 2 days? And then you do it, and you surprise yourself, and you show yourself you can. Going through that anxiety the night before a test, cramming for it, thinking about it, worrying about it, and then training yourself to believe in yourself. Well, hey, I've done this 3 years now. Every time I've done well on the test, and tomorrow's going to be no different. And trying to get into those successful mindsets. That's for me what the college experience, looking back, what its benefit was. Like there's a lot of talk about the university life now and what it's going to look like for our children and stuff like that. Is it worth it? All this. I mean, I'm sure you can get those lessons elsewhere, but someone like my kid, I'd be more concerned with them learning those lessons that I just went through rather than learning the chemistry or whatever.
Memorizing some dates.
Yeah, because whatever you do in your professional life, you'll educate yourself as you go for that. And careers are always learn as you go, continuing education. But those life skills, like if you don't learn them early, they're really, really hard to pick up later. Like you have to be so disciplined. And just when you're young, everything's easier. So it's crazy. I had to laugh when I got the update from you last year, 2023, that you had left your job. And you didn't say this, but I was like, man, he left advertising. Now he works in tourism.
Yeah.
Because you're working on this company called The Ride. And I've been in tourism 15 years now, and I have never, ever, ever heard of a rapper working in tourism. So you got to tell us about this experience and how this all came about for you.
Sure, absolutely. It's this is kind of out there. When I feel that when I explain this to people, there's so many questions. So I'll do my best. And the format I like to explain it as is tour bus meets Broadway show. So there's these traditional tour buses that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with, where there's the hop-on, hop-off bus, which is kind of like Choose Your Own Adventure. They have this in London, here in New York City, a lot of places. And then there's other ones that are a little more formal, educational. They'll tell you fun facts about the city, the history of the city, monuments and their history. This one is like a huge mishmash. Imagine a large bus in New York City, tour bus. However, it has stadium seating, so the seats face the street. You're not facing forward in the direction of traffic. You are facing the street. So that's the first thing. It's 3 rows of stadium seating.
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of doing this yesterday, so I'll help you out. And that was the most shocking thing, because when they park the buses, you don't see that. On curbside, it just looks like a windowless bus. And I'm like, Jesus, what am I getting on here? Because I did no research. Like I was telling you before I went on this, I just wanted to come in totally cold. And I'm like, what did this guy set me up for? I'm on a bus, but there's no windows. Like, how's this going to work? And then you get on, and it's literally stadium seating, and then the entire other side of the bus is glass, and the entire ceiling is glass. Like, I've never seen a bus like that ever.
Right.
Like, I can't think of one other city in the world I've seen that in.
Yes, that's a great overview of the look and feel. And it's a state-of-the-art machine. They have these great speakers, lights, video screens. It's very unique, very unique. And the staff, if you will, there are 2 hosts on every bus who each have a microphone, and they go through Times Square. They go on Fifth Avenue. You see a little bit of Central Park, Bryant Park. You basically go around Midtown Manhattan, and the hosts give you fun facts, whether it be this is how many packages are delivered to New York City in a given day. Here's the history of Central Park and how it was designed. And then
I wrote some of them down. Hold on.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because they were, it's always like there's guide facts and there's real facts. Half or but Columbus Circle, Central Park, which they said is only the 5th largest park in New York. Maybe they meant the state.
It has to be the state.
Because the city, it's by
huge.
far the biggest one. So I think, but it's the 5th largest park in the state. We went through Times Square. And you know what I did learn, and maybe you can confirm this, they said every night at 11:57 that all the Times Square signs change to local artists.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
I have not seen it. It's on my list. I want to do it. 11:57 p.m.
Would you be caught dead in Times Square as a local?
For that, I would make an exception. But before this gig, because our office is right by Times Square, I have to cut through Times Square almost every shift to get to my performance location. I like all New Yorkers, prided myself on just never going through Times Square. And
this is such a bizarre thing in tourism. I'd like to get your perspective on it because it just baffles me. Like, I think of Inner Harbor, Bourbon Street, places like this where the local people that live there hate it. You ask them about it, they hate it. Like you said, go blocks to avoid it. But yet everyone who visits the city to supposedly see what that city's like goes to this area. Like, how does that...
Yeah.
I mean, for locals, it's nice because it quarantines the tourists.
Yeah, it's kind of a blessing that people should be more grateful for.
But it's also, well, the locals should be grateful, but the tourists are kind of getting the sham because they're not really seeing what the real part of the city.
Right.
Like, what is the attraction of Times Square? Is it the shops?
I think a lot of it is the culture of it. Movies, New Year's Eve. I mean, New Year's Eve, everyone all over the world turns on the TV, and it's Times Square ball drop ever since, man, I don't 100 years, however long it's been. And I think it's just ingrained in our culture. I mean, New York as a whole, and Times Square, there's really nothing like it. It's just basically giant TVs everywhere.
It's kind of over the top everything.
It's completely
huge
over the top.
Huge department stores, huge screens.
Yeah.
You're going to the ball drop in a couple days, right?
Oh, yeah, you know it.
They were also talking about that. They say people get there at 8 a.m.
Wow.
And there's all this controversy about whether people wear the adult diapers or not.
Right.
I don't even think you could pay me $1,000 to go. Totally wouldn't be worth it to sit out there in the cold all that time, and you can't leave once you get in. I don't get what the obsession with that is, but I digress. Let's get back to it. So the last thing we did that I thought was funny is that we played a game of New Yorker or tourist.
Yeah.
So they would just pick random people, and we would vote on what we thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
The experience on the ride is just like a bus tour in that sense, where you're getting a lot of this information, but there's also this theater component to it.
Yeah. So here's where it gets a little wacky, is that it has performers as part of this experience. There are 6 different performers throughout the entire tour. The tour lasts an hour and 15 minutes. And they're undercover performers. So like Will said, this is a great people watching. It's like kind of the ultimate people watching experience. there are undercover performers. And I'm not going to give away all the different performers. There are undercover performers throughout the show that are just unassuming people on the street. And all of a sudden, they'll break out and dance. They will break out in song, just completely unexpectedly. And the hosts do a great job of kind of setting it up. Some of the characters have a backstory. Some of them have a wardrobe that reflects that backstory. And there are these surprise performances throughout, and that's what it's really known for. And
well, the cool thing is the technology. Like you said, this is a state-of-the-art vehicle. The performers are on the street. They're outside, but they're mic'd up so you can hear them in the bus.
Yes.
So if they're singing or dancing, and I believe the hosts, because you have 2 hosts on the bus, they can communicate with them too.
Yeah, very unique.
And then, so tell them where you come in.
Sure, here's where I come in. So I'm the ballet dancer. No, so what my part is that I am specifically an improv freestyle rapper, and it's not scripted. This rapper role on the ride is completely unscripted, and your whole thing is to be observant of what's going on. And the unique part about that role is that I'm not just staying in place. I actually pace with the driver of the bus. So they kind of slow roll it up, say, 6th Avenue. And I go with them. So the benefit of that is it's such a crowded, touristy, popular street. I usually perform around Radio City Music Hall, right by the Rockefeller tree. So it's always very packed. So there's a lot of fodder for me. Anything goes. And so it's very freeing. Everything's a clean slate. I'm not rehearsed. I'm not doing the same thing every time. So the other thing is that patrons on the ride can get shout outs. They can there's an option on the checkout experience on the website where you can pay a couple extra bucks, get a special shout out. It's your kid's 18th birthday. It's your son's first time visiting New York City. It's your 50th anniversary, whatever it may be. And I put that as part of it. Where's Charlie at? And Charlie raises his hand, and I do a whole thing about Charlie. So that's my role as part of the ride as a performer.
How did they come up with the idea of having a rapper as part of this? Do you know?
I think it's because hip hop was made in New York City, in the Bronx. This is the birthplace of hip hop. So there's just a natural tie-in there. And I think as hip hop has become just more mainstream, you got Hamilton, full hip hop musical, huge Broadway hit, obviously. And it's such a fun part of this show because it's completely unpredictable.
One of my favorite parts of it was watching you. I mean, you walked with us probably a block at least, maybe more.
A couple, yeah.
Was watching you rap, and then you're literally pointing at people and rapping about their scarf or their outfit or this or that. And some of them just don't even bat an eye. New York City people are just so used to people doing weird stuff that it doesn't even faze them. They don't even break stride. This guy's rapping on the street, whatever. If that happened in my town, the cops would be called.
Right.
There's some crazy guy on the corner, making people uncomfortable as they walk by. Nobody even blinks an eye. It's kind of incredible about the whole pace of the city. I was thinking as we were walking around yesterday, is there anything I could do that would draw people's attention to me? Everyone's just so direct and ahead of where am I going? What's on my to-do list? What am I doing? It's so crazy.
It is.
It's the culture here. Is there a trick to capturing people's attention?
Again, make it about them. So I've done it. I've had the most success in Union Square Park, which has tons and tons of foot traffic. One of the most popular parks in Manhattan. And just making it about them and always complimentary. I don't think it would go well if I was just dissing people. that might go the wrong direction. Just making it about them. Kids really like it. I've found and kids love putting money in the tip jar. They think it's fun, and then I'll say something about them, ask for their name.
One of the things you said earlier was how important feedback is to you when you're on the stage, hearing people react to your punchlines. But when you're on the street, you can't hear how people on the bus are reacting, can you?
You cannot. So it's a bizarre performance experience in that they're just gone. You're performing, and then this
it's
driver,
3 minutes, right, or something like that.
3 minutes, yeah, and the driver's just gone. You think it went well. You see smiles. People are filming it, and then that's it.
Yeah, how many people have videos of you rapping like all over the
All
internet?
over the world,
Yeah.
or just in their phone.
Yeah.
Like at least I don't know, 10 people. Like I don't know, sometimes half of the bus has their
10
phone
people per
out.
ride. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, Japan, you're all over Europe. I'm on some random people's phone, just like making up nonsense on the street.
Yeah, so I guess the only way you get the feedback is if people leave reviews and things like that.
What's really cool is when people actually tag the ride's account when a performer performs, and then the person who manages it does a really good job of sharing it and tagging the actual performer. So you get to see it, and you kind of have it for your portfolio. You know, I do have a collection of tons of clips of me, even like end to end performing. So it's always nice to have, and you can like assess yourself from a different perspective of was I too loud? Was I, you can assess it and kind of review your work, which is nice.
Yeah, to me, it's just really so fun to see someone push the bus tour industry forward a little bit. You think back, okay, bus tours were invented what, in the early 1900s? How much has really changed? You still have the standard bus tour happening every day in major cities across America. Granted, it's useful. Ride around for an hour, get some facts. I just don't see the new generations wanting to do that. In fact, I think they're going to be looking for some more added experience, something that is unique, that they can remember, that doesn't remind them of traveling with their parents. And we haven't really seen too much innovation in the bus industry. Let me think. Okay, you had the introduction of the double-decker bus, the topless double-decker buses, which are great on a nice day, also have some faults to the design when it's raining, not so great to be up there. You have the hop-on, hop-off itineraries, where you can ride around the city, do it as your leisure, but substitute for a taxi, if you will. And then perhaps the most innovative of all, the duck tour, right? The duck tour. Who doesn't love to see a bus tour become a boat tour? I mean, that was pretty cool. That was a good innovation, but it didn't really change the onboard bus experience. So I hope that this can be an example, and when people go and try the ride, they'll see what I'm talking about. It really is a good step forward for the industry in general. But for the sake of time, let's move on. I wanted to talk about something else that you've gotten involved in, another rising segment in the travel industry, virtual tourism. Tell us about your YouTube channel, Ambient New York.
So it was kind of born as part of this performance gig. I do, back-to-back performances, and then there's time, because this is an hour and 15-minute ride end to end. I'm one of 6 performers, and therefore you have some downtime between performances. And all the performers do different things. Some will just walk around Central Park. Some will grab a coffee. Some will read. Some will write. Some bring their laptop and work on whatever other job they have. So I said, what can I do to be smart about this time and not just like doom scroll on my phone? And so what I did is I started just like filming. I would bring when I first started, it was a GoPro, and I would bring it during my shift in my backpack. And I would just walk around Times Square, walk around Central Park, Fifth Avenue, Radio City Music Hall, popular destinations that were within walking distance where I could do this. So, give myself ample time to obviously perform the task that I'm supposed to do, the freestyle rap. And so Ambient New York was born out of that. And it's very fun because I love New York City, and I love exploring New York City. And sharing that with people who may never have the opportunity to go here. The benefit is that it's not in a specific language. It's a first-person kind of view around the city, and you can be anywhere in the world. Maybe a kid who might not have the opportunity to come to New York can see what it feels like to walk through Times Square. And I've also done things where I'm going into different stores. New York is the shopping capital of the world. There's the Macy's, the biggest department store in the world. So I did a video, and they do great decor around Christmas. Did a whole video about the decor within Macy's, obviously the Rockefeller tree, different stores on Fifth Avenue. The Nike store or the Lego store, these places where when you walk around New York City, you see everybody with certain bags. Lego store, M&M store, H&M. So like show them inside of these like iconic places. So that's something I've been growing. It's still relatively new. It's about a little over a year old.
I read this today. It was crazy. The global virtual tourism market is valued at over $700 million. People are paying for virtual experiences, and there's a couple ways they're doing it. I guess the simplest form, which I remember came out probably a decade ago, you could drive in your car and put an app on. It was like a guide app. People did it in Hawaii a lot. You would just rent a car, and instead of hiring a guide, you would have your phone. It was like a GPS app, and then when you pass certain things, it would explain it to you. Okay, now you're passing this. Here's some history behind it. And that's sort of the augmented reality section that's happening now, where you're using a device and it's just enhancing it. Now it would be like the Google glasses, or if you're wearing something like that and you pass it, there could be an app, tourism app, that would explain stuff to you. So a lot of the money's going there, but also a lot of the money is just going into straight VR, virtual reality. It makes sense. It's going to be a lot cheaper to travel virtually than it is in real life. So for many people throughout the world, it's easier. You can go more places. It opens up opportunities that might not be there. Let me read this. See if I can find it. Virtual reality in tourism provides viewers with an immersive tourism experience using a combination of virtual reality, still images, video, audio, narration, and other multimedia forms. So just like any VR you would do, it captures your senses, makes it seem like you're there. There is no doubt that as we move forward in the next decade or two, that we are going to see a complete transformation along with video games and other immersive technology such as this. But for travel, it can be very powerful, and it can be a way for the tourism industry to make money off people that can't afford to travel, which is kind of bizarre and interesting to think about. One thing I was reading today is that people are actually using virtual tourism now to research their trips. So, for example, they will log on to a virtual reality tour of, I'm making this up, but New York City, and they would be able to do basically a Google Maps on steroids and explore the city and do some research before they even get there. Now, this morning, while you were gone and I was doing some writing, I put on your YouTube channel, and I got to say, I really enjoyed it. It was neat to have something on in the background that wasn't television or sports or whatever, and something that I could just look up to every once in a while. And as a fan of travel and tourism, oh, look at that. That's neat. He's in that store. He's in that part of town. That's cool. I definitely see the value for that casual observation, and I definitely see the value for people that wouldn't be able to travel otherwise. It's like, great, cool. You can have this experience. However, there's always a however. One thing I would caution against is when I hear that people are planning these trips, I get a little worried. And I'm not saying that you're doing this, not saying that this is your concept, but for people to go online and do their research on YouTube, for example, about where they want to go, to me, it's just way too much visual research. You are seriously setting yourself up for disappointment.
Right.
And this happens in the outdoor industry all the time with the Instagram stuff, especially, I guide in Hawaii, and people have seen these photos on the perfect day with the perfect swell, with the perfect conditions, and then the photo's been edited, and then we get to that exact spot, and the disappointment these people experience, it's true. Like they like, I can see it in their face, and it's sad. It's like horrible. Like it breaks my heart because these people had their absolute mind set on seeing this photo.
Right.
And they don't get it. And then now it's like, oh, well, they walk away disappointed. And so I worry about that. Like, I feel like there needs to be education around that because people are going to get these unrealistic expectations or forget that it rains sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. You told me earlier that you planned a trip to Vegas using YouTube. So I'm curious, based on what I just said, how do you use YouTube to plan travel?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a balance. I would not recommend, if you're coming to New York in 6 months, 1 month, whatever, to do any walking tours of like in-depth visual walking tours of whole neighborhoods. Like, learn your bearings is what I would say. I'm sure there's videos of like Manhattan's explained in 5 minutes, and it's like, this is the Midtown area, this is Soho. Like, you got to go high level. I recommend just going high level. Like, this neighborhood is known for its hip shopping. This is the theater district where all the Broadway shows are. Here's the vicinity of Central Park, and so I like going in armed a little bit. Here's some things that people say are great experiences, but please do not like ruin it for me. Just whet the appetite. Oh, that's something I'm interested in. I'll even like fast forward. So Vegas, it was just okay. Downtown Vegas and the Strip, obviously, just learning about what areas, because I'd never been there before, and YouTube is my resource just to get like a lowdown.
And there's videos about these different areas on YouTube.
Yeah. So what I did avoid is I avoided like walking tours, which is kind of what Ambient New York is. I avoided any walking tours because I'm going to be there. I'm walking these areas. It was more so give me like the cool spots, or like maybe bars that are off the Strip, like low key places where I can get out of like the tourism. So that's how I recommend people approach it, because your point is like cloudy day, oh, this sucks. Just don't spoil the surprise.
Yeah, I find that information is wonderful, and there's no limit to how beneficial it can be as long as it's not visual. So, for example, you can read everything about the history of a place. Like if you're going to come to Hawaii, read all about the history, read all about the different islands, read about the different people that live on the different islands, the different areas, but go easy on the visuals. You're going to get locked into these like, oh, I can't wait to see this beautiful place and that, but this is nature. It's changing. There's storms, there's swells, things change. That's the best way I've been able to sum it up. Information is limitless benefit as long as it's not visual. What did you think of Vegas? I didn't realize you had never been there.
Yeah, Vegas was...
It's pretty late in life to go to Vegas.
You
missed your golden window of the early 20s.
Right. Yeah. Which probably a blessing.
No, probably good. Yeah.
Honestly,
nothing good would have happened to you at that age. What was your platform for going?
Okay, so me and 3 of my best guy friends, 2 of which I went to college with, we do an annual trip. We've been doing this for almost 10 years. We've done Sequoia National Park. We did Joshua Tree. It's all over the place. It's usually surrounding areas where there's great hikes. In Vegas, there's amazing hikes.
Great outdoors.
We did great outdoor stuff.
It's really cool you guys do it.
Thanks.
Whenever I hear about people that have these annual trips that can keep it going for years and years, it's it's hard because life changes and people get busy, and to do it is really special.
Yeah, so this is the 9th year, and I think we always try to get places that are kind of equidistant. 3 of I'm the only one. They used to all be in New York, or Philly in New York, and now they're all West Coast. 2 in San Diego, 1 in San Francisco. So we try to pick something that's not too much of a trek for one, and the benefit of this one is that I started in San Diego, and we did the drive, which is kind of an iconic drive, San Diego to Vegas. So I stayed in San Diego for like 5 days, and then went to Vegas. And I had a lot of flashbacks to Times Square when I was there. Even people dressed up in like silly outfits, they have that there. I had a lot of fun. I didn't do a ton of gambling. I do enjoy gambling.
Doesn't give you anxiety?
I mean, it definitely does, but it's a rush. It's a rush. It's a rush, man. So I had fun. It was. Am I in like a hurry to go back? Not particularly. I enjoyed it. I felt we saw the things we needed to see, and the hikes were awesome. We went on, and 2 of my friends are huge into off-roading. They have like an off-roading truck, and we did like a 20-mile off-road adventure. Actually, there's a video on Ambient New York of the off-roading. So I did like an offshoot of like a rare non-New York video of like going through Vegas, and it was the trip from San Diego to Vegas with like off-roading and hikes.
Do you plan to do more of those offshoots?
Maybe. I did a thing in Naples, Florida. My brother lives in Southwest Florida, and Fifth Avenue in Naples is a major shopping area and a pretty high-end area of Florida. So I did that. Did okay. I'm focusing on New York, and yeah, as I travel, I think I just don't want to confuse the audience. You know, it's obviously a New York channel, but I don't think an occasional offshoot is a bad thing.
Do you get caught up in the numbers? For me, I mean, a lot of writing sites are going to this where we'll get paid on our traffic and stuff like that, and it's just a miserable experience because you start tweaking your article to do better based on search criteria and this or that, and you just lose your opportunity to be creative in a lot of ways. Like, it's not good or bad, it's just kind of what it is. But for me, I feel like I do things different than I naturally would creatively, if that makes sense,
Yes.
because of the parameters set. Do you struggle with that in your YouTube channel?
I wouldn't say I struggle with it. I try not to be obsessed with the numbers. I want it to do better, which it's been improving month over month. And it's like baby steps. It's like anything else. It's monitoring and seeing what works, you know, what kind of thumbnail works, what kind of title works, what type of duration, how much is on the street versus indoors, you know, what kind of stuff has been overdone, you know, by many creators in the space. So I try not. I don't want to get like clickbaity. There's like I don't want to do cringe headlines. You won't believe what I saw in Times Square.
Yeah.
Like
No, please.
just so I don't do any of those. I want it to be a thing that I grow over time. So I do monitor because YouTube does such a good job with analytics. YouTube Studio is what they've branded their analytics, their dashboard. It's so good. It gets to percentage male, percentage female, where are people watching, like what countries are your most popular countries, what is your age group. They do such a good job of that, and that keys you in on what's you know what your audience is. You know, does it lean more male or female? What's the age group? Because that'll cue you in and to like guide you into what content is performing best.
New York City is famous for its Christmas time, and we're here now between Christmas and New Year's, and I thought it was going to be slammed, packed, and busy, but it really hasn't been. In fact, we've commented the last couple of days just how dead it seems to be. That's common, I guess, for New Yorkers to leave during this time?
So you came in this post-holiday rush. So anything, I would say December 1st, pretty much after Thanksgiving to the 25th, is just peak tourism of the entire year. To give perspective, the ride is open 6 days a week during the holiday. Other times a year, it's only like 4 days a week. And we run 3 buses at a time. Every other time of year, 2 buses at a time. It's just this influx of tourists. During that time, there's times walking on 6th Avenue, right by Radio City, right by the tree, that you are in a standstill of human beings. It is extremely uncomfortable, and I've learned to avoid this. 50th Street and 6th Avenue, where Radio City is, it's just chaos during those months. And right now, to your point, we're in this post-holiday time where a lot of transplants are back home, and they're celebrating Christmas and New Year's at home. A lot of the tourists have left post-Christmas, so it's this nice lull right now. And if you were here last week, you would be like overwhelmed walking on 5th and 6th Avenue.
Do you prefer that as a local?
Yes, we
Take a breath.
we welcome these times. Another example is Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July. The city just empties out. Everyone's at the beach. Everyone's at the Hamptons. Yes, areas like Times Square. You know, August is a big holiday month for Europe. Yes, those areas. I mean, those areas are always packed though. But where I live, you know, I'm in like call it Midtown East, north of Gramercy Park. You know, more of a neighborhoody feel, not hustle and bustle. It is so quiet and it's nice. It's peaceful during those holidays.
It's pretty crazy. My buddy, he wrote an article, and I wish I would have looked it up before. I'm trying to remember, but it was basically making the case that you could visit 12 countries without even leaving New York City, like along the train. So you could take this train to different neighborhoods, and, you know, one time you're in Koreatown, the next you're in Chinatown, then you're in Germantown, and then you're whatever. And it was really neat because I was like, wow, like you could really get around the world, so to speak, without ever leaving the city. Does that affect your it has to be kind of an exotic place or somewhere totally different for you to travel. Like, do you, as a New Yorker, does going to another big city interest you? Would you want to go to St. Louis, Seattle, or are you more interested in, oh, let's off-road in the desert because that's totally different?
Yeah, I think the appeal is that New York is so overstimulating that you have to travel and take breaks or you're going to like lose your mind.
You feel that way?
Yeah, and a lot of people do feel that way. New York, I've never lived anywhere where people are more well-traveled and cultured. Everyone's always in Europe somewhere. They don't just go to the local beach town, and that was a thing that was intimidating to me when I first moved here. You're mentioning countries I've never even heard of or areas I've never even heard of. And I'm like, oh, I go to the Jersey Shore every summer with my family. So anyway, the New Yorkers are like built to travel. They're obsessed with travel. And I think part of that is it is so overstimulating to live here, and you don't realize until you come back from one of those trips. I have a lot of family in Florida, so I go there a lot, and it's the opposite. It's the complete opposite of here. And when I come back, when I take the train, the bus back into the city from LaGuardia, and I'm just like, holy crap. Like it just hits you because you're not accustomed to it. At all times, you're just there's always people around you. There's always things to do. There's never a lack of things to do. Your point, there's always any cuisine. You're actually really spoiled. And I realized this when I moved out during the pandemic, how spoiled you are. Like we could go, me and you right now, go to Koreatown, have some of the best like Korean fried chicken like in the world. Like we could go get some amazing ramen, like just top of the shelf ramen. Go to Little Italy, get some pastries, some amazing pastries. And yeah, it's your friend is right about, you can tour and see all these different cultures. It truly is what they say. It's a melting pot. When you're on the subway, you see every race, every nationality. You hear different languages all around you. And that's very special. And I think that's testament to just the appeal of America. When people think of America and opportunity and like making a career, it's New York. People come here for opportunity, and that's just very inspirational.
Ellis Island, baby.
Yeah.
You know it. Cool. Well, let's wrap up with just some advice, because you've already given me some great advice this weekend, such as, number one, if a subway car is empty, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So what is it like for people that are coming here for the first time? What's the best way to just sort of jump into the New York City lifestyle?
Well, okay, here's some tips. Just realize that everyone's kind of, just because you're here on like leisure and vacation, everybody else who lives here is like going to work, and they're hustling to get to work on time. They're hustling to do whatever. And I encounter almost every day just people just dead stop in the middle of the street and like sometimes get run into, and because they're down on their phone on the Google Maps
trying to find their way. Yeah.
Just simply step aside. It's cool. We get it. Just step aside. Just don't stop. I'm always amazed that like families of 10 just stopped in the middle of 7th Avenue, and it just creates chaos.
Would you recommend people ask locals for directions, or is that sort
Yes.
of like not a new Northeast thing?
I love when people ask me for directions. It's great. And I happily help. I give, you should go here. You should do this. New Yorkers will be happy to help you. That's a misconception. We will not be annoyed. Just, excuse me, which subway do I take to get to Queens? Whatever. Simple question, and we will tell you.
I've always advised people, even though I'm not a New York expert, but grew up close to here, to stay outside of Midtown and then commute in for one day to see those things you mentioned, Times Square, Rockefeller Center, if that's what you want to do. But go in there for one day, check it out, but base your trip somewhere else because you'll get a more authentic view of the city. But as to your point, most of the hotels are located in Midtown. Do you think people coming for the first time should stay in Midtown, or should they try and do it a little different?
I would say it's safest to stay in Midtown. I'm not saying it's mandatory. No, not
physical,
like
you're gonna
not like no, not like safety. I'm meaning convenience. Convenience. All the Broadway shows are right there, right by Times Square, Theater District. I'm guessing most of the things that people are interested in are there. However, second trips, they, I don't know, Park Avenue, Midtown East, something like that. Cool area, still very central, or like Flatiron area, Madison Square Park. I feel that like tourists have this this invisible boundary that goes from the far east side is Fifth Avenue. They don't go east of that. The west side, I would say, is like 8th Avenue. They don't go west of that. North end is probably like 62nd Street, which is like 3 blocks into Times Square. And then south end would be maybe like 34th Street, which is where like the Macy's is. They stay in this like relatively small square and don't really venture out of it. So get out of that square.
Love it. Cool. Tell everyone again where they can find your channels.
Yes, absolutely. So Spotify, all my music is on there under the artist name Boy Pierce, BoyPierce. All of my handles are the same for Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and it's at Boy Pierce Music, one word.
And then Ambient New York.
Yeah, and it's just Ambient New York on YouTube.
Well, it's amazing what you've created here, man. I never knew a rapper who worked in tourism, and I'm proud to say I do now. Pretty cool. I enjoyed the show. It's just amazing to me that you come up with it all off the top of your head every time. For me, that would cause a ton of anxiety. So as a writer, we get to write, edit, double edit, sit on it for a few days. And so every day you just need to stand on the street and whatever comes by, talk about. It's a really cool skill.
Well, man, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on an early episode of the Wake and Wander podcast. I'm a huge fan of the Palisade podcast, which you've been doing for a while now. I do not live in Palisade, Colorado.
Yeah,
however,
you're the only one to listen to it who doesn't live there.
Well, I love it. I love everything you're doing, and just knowing you for all this time, and your journey. You've done so many things, from travel writing to launching a kombucha company to launching a podcast. So it's very inspirational just for me to see you just excel, and I'm just honored to be on here.
Well, likewise, man. You've inspired me going way back. I mean, we kind of started this journey together,
yes,
which is cool. And we can get into that story another time. But it's good to see you doing well. And let's go check out some more in NYC.
Let's do it.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, you may enjoy the previous episode with my guest Brad Ryan, who talks what it's like to travel with his grandmother all over the world. Next episode, we're going to be going out to Hawaii. My guest there in Honolulu is going to argue that it's harder to travel to all the Hawaiian Islands than it is to travel to all 7 continents. One more quick word on Matt Pierce. He actually does all the music for this podcast, so we offer him a big thanks for that. If you want to hear one of his songs, stick around for after the outro. The track title, Whole Wide World, always been one of my favorite of his tunes for obvious reasons. Until next time, you can find me online at Wake and Wander Will.
Wide world, whole wide world. Yes, now I'm riding the terrain, flying high up once again. Got my crew sitting healthy and my boo living wealthy. Level 99, never settle in my mind. So I pedal and I climb up the pedestal and find almighty weapon. So I calm, lightly step into the castle. Satchel, tackled, wrestled down the corridor where I'm grounded through the floor. Roundhouse into my core, down, out, and through the door. Sword down at my side, I gotta round up and ride. Face boss, break jaws till I take off. Face off, stop and swing my serious strike. This is it, take the title, disappear in the night. To the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I walk out and travel to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole